guys, many of you have asked about my diet. Am I vegan? Am I plant-based? Do I just reduce meat consumption for health reasons? So I'd like to share my views on the matter today. I was raised vegetarian because my mom thought it was healthier, or maybe she just didn't like meat. I'm not too sure, but we were predominantly plant-based household as my dad is allergic to eggs and my mom thought that milk was gross. For many years, I was forced to drink soy milk 3 times a day. I hated drinking soy milk. I still do. It's awful. I began consuming more dairy and eggs as a teen because I was going out with friends and cooking my own meals. I never thought much of it one way or another. My views began to change when I got a job as a lab assistant. I was 18 and I remember getting a tour of the lab and my boss told me, "You'll never drink milk again after this." It turns out that milk is a cheap growth medium for cancer cells. In fact, cancer cells seem to thrive in milk-based mediums. We used milk-infused hydrogels to 3D print cancerous organs and test chemotherapy drugs on them. I remember thinking, wait, if milk accelerates cancer growth in a lab, what does it do in your body? And that's where my research into the health benefits of a vegan lifestyle began. Anyways, I continued life as a vegan for health reasons. The way I saw it, I'm living my best life, and I don't care if other people are unhealthy. After all, people choose to smoke, so why was this any different? Flash forward to about a year ago. I was at Thanksgiving dinner, and I hate the smell of meat. I always have, probably because I've never eaten it. I remember walking through the door and feeling nauseated. Then, for some inexplicable reason, I thought, does this turkey not deserve the basic right to live? I mean, animals own nothing except their own lives, and yet we still manage to steal that from them. That night, I began to research and think. Let's start by considering the necessity of using animals. There are scenarios where it is a necessity to use animals. People who live in poverty can oftentimes choose between eating their goat during drought or starving. In that case, they have to eat the animal. It is a necessity, and therefore it is morally acceptable in that instant. If I were on a desert island and I had to choose between eating a pig or starving, I would eat that pig because in the moment, it's a necessity. Let's look at another example that doesn't involve eating animals. If a dog attacks me on the street and I kill it in self-defense, is that necessary? Of course, because at that moment, it was necessary for survival, even though I'm not eating it. So, what is it that makes these actions moral? If I buy a dog and take it home and kill it for pleasure, is that moral? Of course not. If I kill it and eat it, does that then make it morally justifiable because I'm eating it? No, it doesn't. In fact, it is legal in Canada to adopt a cat or dog and eat it as long as it is killed in a certain way. So does killing the animal in a certain way then make it morally justifiable? No, because the dog didn't have to die. In this scenario, I didn't have to kill it, and I don't have to eat it. So in essence, when a victim is involved, in this case a dog, we must ensure the suffering we inflict is necessary in order for our actions to be deemed morally just. Let's think about this for a second. When you kill someone in self-defense, you have to go to court and prove that it was necessary for your own survival. Why do you think that is? You have to go to court and prove that it's necessary. Because when an action is necessary, it becomes morally just. So now let's discuss the most important question here. Do we need to eat animals to survive? Is it a necessity? Well, the American and British Dietetics Associations, which are the largest bodies of nutritional professionals in the world, have categorically stated that a well-planned vegan diet is healthy and adequate for all stages of life, including pregnancy, infancy, and lactation. Additionally, the longest living populations in the world, such as the Okinawans and the Adventist vegetarians, are predominantly plant-based. In fact, nearly all blue zone populations have one thing in common. They are predominantly plant-based. With more and more athletes going plant-based, it is undeniable that a vegan diet can fuel high-level athletic performance. So in short, no, we do not need animals to survive. Every single nutrient found in animals we can make ourselves, or it's found in plants. If we can get everything we need from plants, that makes killing and eating animals completely and utterly unnecessary. And as we've established earlier, if it's unnecessary, we cannot morally justify it. Now, when I talk to people about my reasoning, they tend to use a few mechanisms to compartmentalize their behavior. The first one is that animals live a happy life and they don't see death coming. In their mind, animals live in a happy field and then poof, one day they die. Let's talk about the reality of that for 1 second. 97% of the meat we eat is factory farmed. Make no mistake, factory farms are the same as family-owned farms. Even if we give these animals lush pastures and hay and scratching posts, it is unsustainable. There's not enough land on the planet, not to mention the devastating environmental effects this would have. So, let's assume that you buy that 3% of local pastured animals that live their happy life. They all end up in the same slaughterhouses. So let's talk about slaughterhouses for a second. Slaughterhouse workers are often immigrants who are forced into working there. In Canada, Syrian refugees are being accepted into the country based on the condition that they will work in slaughterhouses, because no one else wants to work in slaughterhouses. They have PTSD rates comparable to soldiers returning from war. You don't see veterinarians getting PTSD from putting cats and dogs to sleep. So clearly, there is some difference between slaughterhouses and veterinaries. That in itself is wholly wrong. No person should have to choose between living in a war-torn country or killing animals day in and day out. So I have one question for you watching this. If you have a dog or a cat at home that you love and they needed to be put down, would you take them to your nearest slaughterhouse? Your answer should tell you exactly how humane, benevolent, and compassionate slaughterhouses are. But now let's talk about that 97% of animals that are factory farmed before they go to the slaughterhouses. Mother pigs are placed in farrowing crates so small that they can't stand or roll over. Their babies are taken from them, their tails are clipped, their teeth are removed without anesthetic, runts are fumped. Fumping is a fully legal process where they hold the hind legs of the piglet and smash their heads against a wall to kill them. The large pigs who don't get killed are put into feedlots and fattened up until they are killed at 6 months of age. Large slaughterhouses will use gas like carbon dioxide to kill the animals. I've been to one, and the process is kind of horrible. You hear these pigs squealing and suffocating to death for about 2 minutes, and then it goes quiet. And then another round begins. The carbon dioxide burns their lungs from the inside out. There are a group of Holocaust survivors that are vegan. They say the sounds the pigs make are the same sounds they heard as their friends and families were gassed to death. It's horrible. All of this is standard industry practice, and it is legal. So again, would you take your dog or cat here? And if your answer is no, then why on earth is it acceptable for billions of pigs to be killed like this? Do we think that somehow these animals don't sense fear? Do they not experience joy? This is a rescued pig and her piglets seeing the sun for the first time. It's the first time they've been outside of a dirty cubic meter cage, the first time they've seen sunlight and felt grass under their hooves. Can we truly say that these animals can't experience joy and pain? Can we continue to bury our heads in the sand and tell ourselves that somehow these animals are different from us and that they do not suffer? Let's talk about cows now. Dairy cows only produce milk for one reason: to feed their young. They are separated from their mothers at birth and placed in isolation. The males are starved until their muscles atrophy, at which point they are sold for veal. The females are isolated and fed soy formula instead of milk. When they are old enough, they are artificially inseminated in a device called a rape rack. The mother gives birth to her and her baby is taken from her so that you can drink the milk that is meant for her baby. The mothers cry out for weeks searching for their babies. This cycle repeats itself 5 or 6 times until she can no longer give milk, at which point she is sold for low-grade meat like hamburgers. Again, this is standard industry practice. It is legal worldwide. Let me ask you this: if you have a child, how would it feel to have them taken from you, only to be exploited for the milk you naturally produce for your child? Even if a cow experienced a fraction of the sorrow that you would go through, what on earth gives us the right to inflict that kind of pain and suffering on another living, sentient being? There's a sanctuary near where I live with a dairy cow. When they rescued her, she was pregnant with her 6th baby. After giving birth, she hid the baby and charged at anyone who would come near. In fact, all 8 of the cows in the sanctuary, who have all had babies taken away from them, would charge at anyone who tried to come near to her calf. Do you really think that they can't feel pain and they can't remember these horrible things that have happened to them in the past? It may not be the same level of suffering as a human would experience, but they can suffer. These cows are being let out of confinement. They're seeing the sunlight for the first time in 6 months, after being milked indoors in a very confined area and having mastitis in their udders. They will soon be inseminated, and the cycle will continue. Cows are like giant puppies. They're affectionate and playful. This is a dairy cow whose son was taken from her. She escaped her enclosure and chased the truck for miles until a farmer came to pick her up and bring her back to the farm. Chickens are bred to be so big that sometimes they can't stand. Separated from their mothers, the males are useless and are macerated or gassed alive. The females produce eggs and have been bred to produce an egg almost every day. Usually, they would only produce 1 to 2 per month. Many hens die from eggs cracking inside of them and bleeding to death. As with cows, when they can no longer produce eggs, they are run through electrified water, followed by boiling water, to make defeathering easier. Again, this is legal. This is standard industry practice. This is humane slaughter. So ask yourself one last time, would you bring your cat or dog to a place like this? And if not, why is it okay to do this to other animals? These hens are being let outdoors for the first time. It's hard to relate to chickens, but I think we can all agree that they're exploring, they're curious, and most importantly, they deserve to explore and live their lives as they see fit. Another reason people use to justify eating animals is culture. They argue that their ancestors have been doing this forever and eating meat forever, and it's part of their culture. And it's true. Certain areas of the world have consumed animals for many, many years. But does that make killing them okay? Our ancestors did tons of things that we no longer do today. They have raped and pillaged and murdered and cannibalized. Certain parts of Europe used to put belladonna drops in their eyes to dilate their pupils. Our ancestors did a lot of dumb things. So does that alone justify us continuing to do them? Does that mean I should be able to go kill another human because at one point some of our ancestors did the same thing? Of course not. Because our morality has evolved. Our culture has evolved. Our ancestors are not good models for us to base our morality on. One huge difference between us and them is that they ate meat to survive. We do not have to, and therefore we shouldn't. It's as simple as that. So let's talk about culture. In Japan, culturally, it is acceptable to kill thousands of dolphins every year. In China and parts of Korea, they kill animals including cats and dogs. In the Faroe Islands, they kill thousands of pilot whales every year. In Eastern Europe, they kill horses. Are those things morally justifiable because it's culturally acceptable? And if your answer is no, then why is it okay to eat pigs and cows and chickens here? Let's think for a minute. When you think of people farming cats and dogs in China, would it be okay if they had bigger cages? Would it be okay if they had lush pastures? Of course not. When we fight for the dog meat trade in Korea to end, we're not asking for higher welfare for the animals. We're asking to stop the trade entirely. You see, no matter how well or poorly we treat these animals, we are always taking their life from them. And the minute we do that, it is abusive and it is wrong. All these animals, dolphins, whales, cats, dogs, pigs, chickens, cows, they all have something in common. They can feel fear, joy, and pain, and they can suffer. They can all show affection and receive affection. And ultimately, they deserve to live their lives without human-inflicted suffering. They deserve the basic right to live. As someone who has never eaten meat, can you explain to me what the difference is between a dog and a cow, or a pig and a chicken, or a cat and a chicken? What about fish and dolphins and sharks? I mean, to me, I see more similarities than differences. And I'm not sure why some animals get more right to live than others. It's never made sense to me. Ultimately, a cow doesn't care if it had a bigger cage. It doesn't matter if it lives a life in a lush pasture. The cow does not care if its flesh will be labeled as grass-fed or corn-fed or grain-fed or high welfare or organic after it is killed. Those labels are there to make you feel better, to ease your conscience. All that cow cares about is the fact that it's going to be hung upside down with a bolt gun to its head because you wanted to eat a steak. Is that steak worth the life of an animal? Eating steak will last a matter of minutes and costs an animal its entire existence. No matter how you look at it, even if you go fishing and catch a fish yourself, the minute you take its life unnecessarily, that is abuse. There is no right way to do the wrong thing. That fish did not need to die at your hands because you can get everything you need from plants. The most compelling reason against veganism that I've heard is convenience. Let's face it, being vegan is hard. It's a pain in the ass, and it means that sometimes you go hungry at restaurants. I mean, to be honest, I've thought about ordering something that has a bit of egg in it or a bit of butter in it when I'm at a restaurant because there aren't other options. But then I ask myself, is the next 30 minutes of hunger worth more than the life of an animal? Is it worth all of the suffering that these animals go through? And ultimately, it isn't. Those animals have one chance at life, one existence, and I'll be damned if I pay for it to be a life of suffering cut short by the blade of a knife. So sometimes I upset my family by being vegan. Sometimes I'm a pain in the ass. Sometimes people bring me to a steakhouse and then I don't eat. Sometimes I have to embarrass myself by asking what the vegan options are, and then the server says, "Oh, I'm not sure, I'll go ask in the kitchen," and I feel bad for making her have to do more work. And sometimes people say what I'm doing is stupid or wrong, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So after doing some research, this was my conclusion. Is being vegan a personal choice? That's the question. Simply put, no, it's not. Because when you eat animals, you are neglecting the animal's choice to live their lives unencumbered by human-inflicted pain. And you may not believe that an animal's life is worth the same as a human's life. And that's okay, I agree with you. That's why I would kill the pig on that desert island and eat it. So ask yourself this instead. Does an animal's life have enough value to keep them off of your plate? Is the taste of animal flesh and secretions really more important than a life? Their lives might seem inconsequential to you, but remember, it's all they have, and you are paying to have it taken from them. Being vegan is hard. I think seasoned vegans forget how hard it is. Eating is such a huge part of our lives, and it's hard to change it all at once. So if you feel overwhelmed by what I've said, instead of forgetting everything you've heard and going back to how you were eating before, try to reduce. Make it a goal to eat less and less animal products every week until you just so happen to be vegan. Thank you for listening.